This story is called The Teeny Tiny Woman. Once there was a teeny tiny woman, and she lived in a teeny tiny house on a teeny tiny path in a teeny tiny town. One day, the teeny tiny woman decided to take a teeny tiny walk. So she tied up her teeny tiny boots, and she put on her teeny tiny bonnet, and she went out her teeny tiny door and down her teeny tiny front steps to the teeny tiny path. And she took teeny tiny steps for a teeny tiny time. And then on the side of that teeny tiny path, she saw something. It was a teeny tiny bone. Well, the teeny tiny woman bent down and picked up that teeny tiny bone. And she put it in the teeny tiny pocket of her teeny tiny apron. And then she turned around and took teeny tiny steps back to her teeny tiny house. She climbed her teeny tiny steps and opened her teeny tiny door. And she went to her teeny tiny kitchen. There, she opened her teeny tiny cupboard. And she took out that teeny tiny bone from her teeny tiny apron pocket. And she put it on the teeny tiny shelf in the teeny tiny cupboard of her teeny tiny kitchen. Now, after all this, the teeny tiny woman was a teeny tiny bit tired. So she went to her teeny tiny bedroom and she climbed into her teeny tiny bed. And she pulled up her teeny tiny covers and laid her teeny tiny head on her teeny tiny pillow, and she went to sleep. But after a teeny tiny time, she heard a teeny tiny voice saying, "Give me my bone." She opened up her eyes. The teeny tiny voice said again, "Give me my bone." Well, the teeny tiny woman turned over in her teeny tiny bed and went back to sleep. But after a teeny tiny time, she heard the teeny tiny voice again say, "Give me my bone." The teeny tiny woman opened up her teeny tiny eyes and listened. Again, the teeny tiny voice said, "Give me my bone." Well, the teeny tiny woman put her teeny tiny pillow over her teeny tiny head and went back to sleep. But after a teeny tiny time, she heard the teeny tiny voice again saying, "Give me my bone." It sounded like it was right outside her house. She listened again. "Give me my bone," said the teeny tiny voice. Well, the teeny tiny woman sat up in her teeny tiny bed. She threw off her teeny tiny covers. She put her teeny tiny feet into her teeny tiny slippers, and she tied on her teeny tiny robe. And then she stomped out to her teeny tiny kitchen and threw open those teeny tiny cupboard doors. And out of the teeny tiny cupboard, she took that teeny tiny bone. And then she stomped to her teeny tiny front door. She threw open the front door, and with all her might, she threw that teeny tiny bone out of her house, saying, "Here, And that's the story of the teeny tiny woman.